Good afternoon, everyone from rainy Mount Pleasant. I hope you're all doing well, and we're so glad to see so many faces today for this campus conversation focusing on the Student Food Pantry. I just have a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to Dr. Watson and Dr. Johnson. If you haven't done so, or we would love for you to introduce yourself in the chat, your name, where you're located right now. Sometimes we get folks from across the country, as well as your graduation year and or relationship to CMU. We do have everyone on mute at the moment, or ask you to mute yourselves just to help with any feedback issues we might have. We do encourage you to ask questions throughout this campus conversation, either raise your hand function or by using the chat, and then we can address the questions in our question and answer session at the end. We do find with this presentation, a lot of questions are answered on the next slide. So maybe just keep that in mind when you're coming up with your questions and pop it in the chat so you don't forget. Additionally, I just wanted to make everybody aware that this session is being recorded. We like to record all of our campus conversations because we like to share them after the fact, and sometimes individuals cannot, end up attending that day. Lastly, I will be sending out a follow-up email at the end with the recording link for everyone, with a survey if you wouldn't mind sharing your feedback. And then if there's anything that comes up throughout the presentation that we would like to include in that email as well. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Renee Watson, and she's going to introduce herself and talk to us for a few minutes before we get started on our presentation.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Allison, for that wonderful introduction. It is always a great day to talk about student affairs at CMU. And I just want to, first of all, give credit and an appreciation to Allison and Octavia Jennings for giving us this opportunity to be able to speak to you about the food pantry and the work that's taking place. They're great advancement partners, and we're just so elated that we have them and for them to allow us to come and share today. So thank you so much. As she said, I'm Dr. Renee Watson. I've been at CMU. This is my second year. I relocated from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where I served as the Associate Vice President for Student Life. I have enjoyed my time here. I love our student body. I love working with our colleagues, and we love serving students so they can reach their personal and professional goals. In student affairs, we have a range of departments that are student facing that range from residence life to multicultural academic student services, obviously the Volunteer Center, the Food Pantry, Leadership Institute. These are just some of the ways that we impact students. So we have a host of programs and services that are there to help our students become well-rounded, to be critical thinkers, and to be contributors to this great community and to our world. So we're going to talk a little bit about the food pantry. We have Dr. Johnson, Erica Johnson here. She just successfully defended her dissertation. And she walked the stage this past December. I had the opportunity to be there while she received her hoodie. And so that was a great opportunity. So we're very fortunate to not only have a dedicated practitioner and an advocate of social justice and believes in access and equality, but also someone who is a scholar in this field. We're very, very lucky to have Dr. Johnson serve in this capacity. She's also the interim assistant vice president. She has a huge portfolio that ranges from residence life to Leadership Institute, Student Disability Services, Senior Cares. I mean, I tell you, she's my left arm, my right arm. just everything. She has impacted this role and the campus body specifically since I've started. So again, thank you, Erica, for your leadership. And so this is really about student success for us. I mean, we talk about the food pantry, but it really is about student success and all that we can do to really ensure that students have a level playing field so they can reach their personal and professional goals. So I don't really want to take away from Erica's thunder. She has a lot to share with you. She's going to give you highlights, things that are working well, ways that we want to expand. and ways that we want to engage you. There's a lot of expertise, untapped potential in this space. And we want to spend the last time here engaging you on what would you like to see? What are the missed opportunities? What are some ways that we should be thinking going forward? And I also would be remiss if I did not give our new trustee chair a shout out. Todd Regis, thank you so much for being with us, sir, and for being in this space. It's so good to see you and to know that you have been a partner, started on day one as a partner in this work. All right, so without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Watson. As she said, I'm the interim assistant vice president for student affairs, and I've been at CMU for 11 years now. And so I've seen the implementation of our student food pantry through to its current iteration. And I just completed my dissertation, as she mentioned, on food insecurity among college students and its impact on retention, graduation, and grade point averages and student success. And so I have a real passion for this area, and I'm so grateful today to be able to talk with you about what I know and what I've learned and how we're really trying to move the needle on student success for students impacted by food insecurity at CMU. So I will share my screen to see here. Hiding in the there we go. All right. So we're just going to jump off. I don't want to make any assumptions that folks are familiar with food insecurity or the concept and what it is. So just want to share a little bit about a quick definition. So the USDA utilizes the Anderson 1990 definition of food insecurity, that food insecurity is really the limited and uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods, or the limited or uncertain ability to acquire them in an acceptable and in socially acceptable ways. So that's really, there's some key components there, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a second here. But thinking about what contributes to food insecurity, particularly among college students. So we know there are sort of three main drivers. There are obviously unique individual circumstances as well, but financial constraints is the largest, obviously, right? So students who are from low socioeconomic backgrounds, students who have unmet financial need are certainly more likely to experience food insecurity. And some of that is really due to the rising costs of the cost of living. We've all seen increases right at the grocery store. The rising cost of housing options, textbooks, and transportation also heavily impact those. Additionally, time constraints is another contributor. The challenge, especially if you're financially constrained as well, is that you're trying to work as much as possible and you have class on top of that, right? And so there isn't a lot of time to be able to do meal prep and that kind of thing. And we know that some of those more convenience foods are more expensive. And so all of that kind of contributes to these considerations, as well as transportation. And this is really impactful for places that have rural institutions with lack of public transportation, perhaps, right? But additionally, if you're financially constrained, transportation obviously is a more expensive piece of the puzzle in your finances. And so finding the ways to get to grocery stores, and especially those that are low cost, you might have to go to the closest one, that kind of thing can create that challenge. And we know that all from national studies. Here we go. So just a quick point about food insecurity. As I mentioned, the definition is a little bit unique, and it really incorporates what the USDA has defined as sort of these levels of food security down to food insecurity. So there are two groups of folks who we don't focus on as having food insecurity, and that's folks who report no food access challenges, right? And then also even marginal food insecurity is not considered a food insecurity piece, and that's particularly focused on folks who typically have some anxiety over having enough food or shortages of food, but they haven't had any significant changes to their diets or food intake. And so it's important to note that those are not the folks that we're focusing on in the CMU Student Food Pantry. We're really focusing on these next two groups, which is having low food security or very low food insecurity. And that's really having reduced food intake or not having enough funds to purchase food when you're hungry at the very low place, or food security status, or having also, it's important to note, having reduced quality, variety, or desirability of diet. So if you're focused on the least expensive foods, you're not always getting the right nutrition to fuel your body, and that is considered a form of food insecurity. So a little bit about what food insecurity looks like in college. Colleges and universities across the country are experiencing, college students across the country are experiencing food insecurity at alarming rates. So depending on the research study and the type of institution, it ranges anywhere from 36% to 47% of students experiencing food insecurity in college. And so what does that look like at CMU? We're right within that, national range. Approximately 40% of CMU students reported being food insecure on our graduating student senior survey in 2019. And 20.4% of CMU students reported experiencing hunger without having enough money to purchase food in March of 2021. So just to give you some context of what that would look like for today, those are based on undergraduate numbers. We have just over 10,000 undergraduates on campus. And so that would be, we would anticipate that approximately over 4,000 of our undergraduate students may be experiencing food insecurity, with almost half of those experiencing hunger on campus. So a little bit more about who might be food insecure in college. We know that there are a couple populations of students who are more likely to experience food insecurity, and this gives us a better picture of what that might look like at CMU and what's happening on our campus. So we know from national research that first-generation college students, students who have financial need, and students who identify as BIPOC are more likely to have food insecurity in college. And so just to put that in context of CMU, we have about almost 18% of our students are first-generation college students. Just about over 30% of our students are Pell eligible. So that is showing the lowest level of, I guess the highest level, I apologize, highest level of financial need to provide financial support and financial aid in college. And then almost 20% of our students identify as BIPOC. So that's students of color on campus. So we know that some students may have multiple of those factors as well. And so that in total, in unique students, 46.8 of our students have at least one of these factors on our campus that make them at higher risk for experiencing food insecurity. And what we've seen is, in our food pantry usage and the data that we consistently collect and review for our food pantry usage is that this is really consistent with the students who are utilizing the food pantry heavily. So a little bit about why we care so much about food insecurity in college and the toll that it takes on students. So nationally, researchers have found that there are physical impacts, including challenges with sleeping, the physical discomfort of hunger and that kind of thing. There are mental health impacts. Students who are food insecure are much more likely to experience anxiety, stress, and depression when they're experiencing food insecurity. Additionally, there's this social component of shame and social stigma that impacts their ability to, create community and participate in community while they're on their campus as well. And these are really crucial factors because they really do impact, all of those factors are known to impact student success. But additionally, food insecurity itself is known to impact student success. So students who have food insecurity are more likely to have lower grade point averages, and they're less likely to persist in college. So, moving through from year to year and returning to campus. They're also more likely to withdraw from college or leave college without a degree. And so that's really a challenge when it comes to student success. And we need to try to work to address that. And really, it makes sense, right? We know many folks have probably heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Or his theory of human motivation. And that really is sort of the basis for the work around student food insecurity, right? Is that if folks are hungry, they can't sleep, they're experiencing these physical discomforts, that they're going to prioritize meeting those needs before they're able to prioritize learning and spending time in the classroom and whatnot. So that might mean in a college campus that students are prioritizing working over studying and that kind of thing. So it's really important to think about how do we help students meet those physiological needs, which are the basis for all humans and their needs, so that they can really start to achieve some of those higher level learning and achievement goals. And so this is where the role of the Student Food Pantry becomes crucial. So in response to all of the challenges that I just mentioned, colleges and universities across the country have started on-campus student food pantries, and Central Michigan University is right on board with that response. And so we started our food pantry right around 6 years ago or so. And so we're in our sixth year here. And we're really proud of the work that we're doing in the Student Food Pantry, because we know that providing the food support to students who are food insecure at CMU increases their likelihood of re-enrolling in their second year by 23%. So lots of folks call that their first to second year retention rate. And so, and in the world of higher education, that first to second year retention rate is so crucial, because we know if we can't get them back in their second year, they're really less likely to return to campus at any point to complete their degree. And we know that folks who attend college and who take on debt, sometimes the student loans to pay for college, and leave without a degree, are at a significant disadvantage financially when they leave with that debt and don't have the degree to be able to afford to pay back those student loans, right? So a couple of quick facts about our Student Food Pantry. The Student Food Pantry provides supplemental food support to any CMU student once per week. So students can visit once per week to supplement the things that they're already purchasing on their own, with fresh meat, fresh dairy, produce, shelf-stable food products, some basic self-care needs, so hygiene products that would be essential for day-to-day life, and some very basic school supplies, things like pencils, pens, paper, note cards, that kind of thing, to promote their student success. And then a little bit about the food pantry. We've really been expanding our reach on campus over the last couple of years. And so in fiscal year 23, so that just ended in June, from July 1 to June 2023, we had over 7,800, just over 7,800 visits to our student food pantry and served just over 1,300 unique students. And we did that by being open 3 days a week with one graduate assistant supporting the management of the day-to-day operations there. And this year we're continuing to grow. We've already seen over 5,600 visits to the student food pantry by over 1,400 unique students. And with that, in the space that we have, we've extended our days a week that we're open. So we're open 5 days a week to be able to better reach students and to be able to better serve them in a timely fashion. And so that has ensured that we've had to grow to 3 graduate assistants to be able to provide the ongoing support. And just with the increased visits year over year, for example, I can share that in our first year we were open, we had just under 700 visits. And then, we saw consistent increases to 2,500 about 2 years later. And now we're expecting just over 10,000 visits to the student food pantry this year. So a little bit about our pantry. It looks very much like a typical food pantry. Students come in and quote unquote shop our shelves. We are finding it really important to allow students to make those choices so that they can get the products that they need and only the products that they would want, so that there isn't, we limit waste, right? But also to be able to provide some of that self-confidence and self-assurance that they're caring for themselves through that, right? To reduce shame and stigma. It's very similar to a shopping experience, but with no cost. And you can see some great pictures of some of our staffers there who are working to staff it. So in addition to the 3 graduate assistants, we have about a team of 10 students who also help to manage the day-to-day operations, stocking shelves, cleaning, checking students in to utilize the food pantry. And so a little bit more about our food pantry. We really try to be good stewards of the funds that were provided from our very generous donors. And so the food pantry works with several local organizations to source either no cost or low cost food and supplies for the pantry. So we have a list of community partners here. Greater Lansing Food Bank is our Feeding America partner and provides us with significantly low cost and very often free supplies, including food for the pantry. And yet then you can also see some of our more local to Mount Pleasant community partners, where we really try to ensure that nothing goes to waste within our communities. So we are constantly, if folks have Community Compassion Network aren't able to utilize all the products that they have. They're providing those to us at no charge, as well as we do some food pickups at Aldi, and we get financial support from Meyer as well. It's really important to note, though, through the financial support of the food pantry, we're able to source food at a much lower cost than the retail prices that you would see on the shelves today. So a pound of food still costs around 20 cents per pound through our different community partnerships, as I mentioned, which is really truly a fraction of retail prices. If you look at the, the USDA rates on those things now, the average cost of a pound of meat currently can range anywhere from almost $6 a pound to just over $10 a pound, depending on what type of product we're talking about. But we're consistently sourcing at that just around 20 cents a pound or free daily. And just a mention that we're incredibly grateful for the support of our very generous donors who make all of this possible through their support of the food pantry. We do try to put all of those funds to good use to make sure that students are as successful as they can be while they're here at CMU, and we couldn't do that without the support of our community. So we're very grateful. So I wanted to open it up now for an opportunity to chat. What do you see that's working in your community to address food or basic needs insecurities? Any ideas that you might have for us or questions that you might have for me? I would be more than happy to chat and share and talk through this challenge and how we're working to address that at CMU.
I will go ahead and ask a question. Erica, can you talk about what it looks like in the summer for students that stay on campus as well?
That's a great question. So we do stay open in the summer. So we are essentially only closed a very short time out of the year, and that's when the entire university closes in December, and we help prepare students for those closures. So during the summertime, we are open 3 days a week generally, and able to provide support all year round. We do see decreased usage. So as the student campus population declines during the summer, we do see decreased usage, but there are certainly students here who are typically working many hours who are still experiencing food insecurity while they're here on campus.
Thank you.
Erica, talk about the expansion and what's needed there, and what are some of the student impact points that you see occurring in that space, and how soon that project launch.
Great, yeah. So with the rapid expansion of student usage of our student food pantry, we are seeking to expand the support and services that we're able to provide in the pantry. One of the challenges we had was spacing, right? So serving more students requires a bit more space. And so we are currently working with our space committee on campus to be able to identify a new location. I will say it's always a bit challenging because food storage obviously has very specific safety requirements. We need loading docks, and there's some very specific requirements for access to cleaning options, right? Sinks and that kind of thing. So we do require somewhat of a unique space on campus, which isn't, not every building has what we would potentially need. So we are working hard to find what might work on our campus currently. And that's just because we've, with the increased usage, students were experiencing lines to be able to enter the food pantry. We had to better learn how to manage crowds and ensure the safety, especially for fire safety reasons, with the number of students that we're serving regularly. And so we've been able to do that, but that increased the wait time for students. And that's really a deterrent for using this success resource. And so that was part of the expansion that we did to the 5 days a week in November. And that's had some significant success. We've seen some new students using that, right? So folks were less inclined to wait several hours to be able to utilize the resource, but have been able to see some expansion of who we're able to serve and how fast we're able to serve them with some of our new time openings. So we're really excited about that.
And as student affairs gears up for our budget cycle, we're looking at refrigerators that we need so we can offer, protein and produce to students that can have the full nourishment that they need. And we're also looking at setting aside budget money for repair because that's part of the operation to ensure that the refrigerators are working well, as well as the staffing that Erica spoke about, and a full-time coordinator is what we hope to add to the staff. We believe now it's going on in the 7th year at the food pantry, and so now it's time to have a dedicated full-time staffer to oversee all the areas that Erica's mentioned. So that will be prioritized in our budget for this year.
We're really excited about that full-time staff member as well, because we know that students who are experiencing food insecurity, that's usually not the only challenge that they're experiencing on campus. And we think that a full-time staff member will be able to better connect them with some of those other resources that we have at CMU, including academic support resources to ensure their success and their ability to graduate successfully from CMU.
Erica, do you have other the issues that you would like to share? Obviously, space has been something that you've had to work through. Are there other things that individuals might not always think of when you are managing something like this?
Sure. Well, one of the challenges that we've recently, in the last year or so, addressed is really being able to source enough product at a reasonable price, right? So we were very fortunate to work with one of our local vendors who had identified a national vendor who provides food at below retail price value. They work specifically with food pantries and are able to source overstock items and that kind of thing and be able to provide that to us at a very low cost. So I thought it was very interesting through the pandemic and even post-pandemic for a few years. Feeding America, which is the largest, nonprofit that works to address food insecurity in the country, was not able to provide our local food banks with food pantries across the country with enough product to serve their populations. And that's not just, to CMU, that's broader across the whole country. And so that was a really big challenge that we had to address. And so that's how we were able to then turn to and find another vendor who would be able to provide similarly low cost items, but at a more like privatized circumstances. So that's been a really unique challenge, and learned lots about supply chains over the last couple of years as well. So, we saw supply chain concerns in the grocery stores during the pandemic, and then the challenge that all created was that, the food banks really rely on stores if they purchase too many products to be able to sell those at a reduced cost to the Feeding America sources. And when shelves were empty, they were selling everything, right? So those products were not available. So we just had a bit of a challenge there, and we were very fortunate to be able to address that most recently.
Thank you. We do have a question. I think it got sent to me as opposed to the whole audience, which is totally fine. How can our alumni and our community assist the Student Food Pantry?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thank you so much. There's several different ways, right? So, and some of that just depends on where you are as well. So I know our network expands across the country, so I'll try to give a couple of different options. But first of all, I would say that many of our alumni are still connected with folks in the community here, right? And with students. And so making sure that every student on this campus is aware of the CMU Student Food Pantry as a resource, and really talking about the Student Food Pantry and food pantries in general for college students as resources for student success is really crucial in eliminating and the shame and stigma around that, right? So if students are willing to reach out and utilize a pantry, because we've shared with them that, if you're struggling with food insecurity, you're going to be more successful if you use the Student Food Pantry. This is a success resource just as much as an academic advisor is a success resource for you. That's a really big piece in convincing folks who need to use the pantry, because a lot of times we see the students who sometimes need it the most are very concerned that other people might need it more and are resistant to using it, right? Or concerned about that shame or stigma, and wanting to avoid the food pantry. And so I would say it's crucial to help break down that stigma of getting help when you need it, because in the long run, if you can get that college degree, you're just going to be that much more, have that much more financial security moving forward. So asking for the help when you need it now can really make that difference. So that would be number one, is to destigmatize food insecurity support, right? And to talk about it as a student success mechanism. Additionally, I would be remiss if I didn't say financial support obviously is a huge component as well. We are entirely donor funded in the Student Food Pantry. As I mentioned, we try to stretch every dollar that we can as far as it will go. But we are able to provide food at reduced cost, or to source food at reduced cost compared to the retail price. So giving $1 to us is very different than giving a can of food, right? You might spend just over $1 on that can of food, but we could buy 5 cans of food with those funds, in a different way. So that's a huge way to support. And then I would also say, if you're in the local area or you're visiting campus, we would be happy to give you a tour so that you can see, what it is, and how we operate on campus. But we'd be more than happy to have you volunteer with us as well, or highly encourage you to volunteer with food insecurity organizations in your local community, just to help raise awareness that this is an issue that affects college students. It's an issue that affects folks across our country, and is a growing issue in our communities. And so, we need to be thinking about broader solutions and how we can all work together to address the concerns.
I also want to add that we care for students for their hygiene products, as well as students that need warm clothes. Some of our students, they arrive and they don't have coats, they don't have mittens, they don't have gloves, they don't have hats. And Erica's office, in partnership with campus departments and colleges, have been a great resource in making sure the students have access to those items as well. And so if you have those items that you want to give up because someone's outgrown it, or you've replaced it with a new garment, then please be sure to donate those items. We clean them and we make them readily available, and our students are so appreciative to have them. Many of our students come from around the country, and sometimes they're just underprepared for Michigan weather, as I was, by the way, when I relocated from Nevada. It just really, really helps. And then another piece I want Erica to touch upon is she goes in great length to help students with the financial wellness piece, and helping them understand the finances and understand how that's a major role, just helping them stretch that dollar and understand how to reduce their debt and so forth. So Erica, can you talk about the financial wellness piece that you component to this whole student success piece?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Volunteer Center also manages the Financial Wellness Collaborative for the campus. And so that's ensuring that all of our students leave CMU with the financial skills that they will need to be able to manage their finances post-college, right? But what we know is that that's a skill it's not frequently taught at the K-12 levels, right? And once you get to college, even if it is taught at the K-12 levels, they're really not, talking specifics about student loans and how to manage those, right? And what is payback on a student loan going to look like? And we know finances are something that folks don't really talk about a lot in society in general. And so sometimes even families are not sharing that information with their children, right? And so there's just not a lot of easy ways to learn that and how to manage your finances effectively. And really, what does it cost to live today, right? If you've lived at home with parents, for your entire life, you're really not familiar with how to or how much rent might be in an area, right? And so the Financial Wellness Collaborative really, we put on presentations to different classrooms. We work with different faculty members to infuse financial education into their coursework. And then we also have an online resource where students can access 24/7 and just ask questions about their finances. And one of the biggest tools that we see used on that is the student loan piece. So students can put in their student loan information. There's a federal ID that they get. They can put that in there, and it will automatically pull in what their federal student loans look like and be able to help them. Like, here's what a repayment plan that looks like this would be, right? And how long you're paying for that and what your monthly payment might be. And that's really a great tool for folks as they're graduating and considering job offers of, does this job allow me to afford to be able to, buy a car, buy a house and or rent, right? And what can my rent be? What can it look like? And to be able to pay back my student loans in a reasonable amount of time as well. So it's a really great resource. Especially with food pantry users, we also talk a lot about groceries and how to shop the grocery store to make things stretch, right? To make dollars stretch and to be able to get the most nutrition you can from the lower cost items too. So we have great recipes that we also share in the food pantry of, if you take what you can get here and you combine it with these lower cost items in the store, you can really create a nutritional meal that, you can get 3 or 4 meals from. So it's great.
Thank you, Erica. We do have a question in the chat that I will go ahead and read. Are there special services like delivery available for those individuals who have mobility or disability concerns?
Sure. So first of all, I would like to share that our food pantry is accessible. That is a requirement of food pantries, is to ensure that they are accessible. And so we are located in a lower level, but we do have an accessible elevator to ensure that is the space is accessible. Additionally, while we don't have a very specific delivery piece, what we do say is for any student who cannot come to the pantry and or visit the pantry during our open hours, if there is a specific challenge, we will work with you to figure out how to best do that. So I have personally delivered food to different locations on campus. We've had staff who've been able to do that. We've also arranged, if a student has a friend, right, who's willing to stop and pick that up, we've also arranged for those pieces as well. So it's just sort of on a case-by-case basis, depending on what folks might need, right? So, and what works best for them and with their timing. So we will meet students where they are. I would also say we have emergency food supply bags around campus in various locations that students are most likely to share that they're food insecure. So the volunteer center always has them because we're known for the managing the food pantry, but also our financial aid office and our One Central, which is our, where students go to pay their bills on campus. And so if a student indicates that they're food insecure in those locations, there are already pre-made bags ready for them to be able to use that will get them at least through until their next distribution. And we can meet most dietary restrictions even within those bags. So we're really proud of the fact that if a student indicates on campus that they have a challenge, we're going to try to get them the resources they need as fast as possible.
I have one more question. I'm just curious about meeting the needs of individuals who may have different cultural backgrounds and the specifics of that. And that's something that you are able to accommodate for them.
Yes. Yes, I will say that that has been a challenge with the growth of our pantry, right? Is making sure that we have what all students might need in that space, and with limited space and limited resources, right? That's always a challenge. So what we've really done is focused on things that are sort of staples in various different cultural backgrounds and sort of ease of prep as well for college students. And so you'll see some somewhat unique products, right? So we have the standard what would be the typical American college student food in the media, which would be the Easy Mac, right? That kind of thing. And that would be a quick meal between classes. But for our students, especially our international students, they have very differing food preferences, and Easy Mac is not necessarily going to meet their food needs. And so we ensure that we have things like basics like the rice that they might regularly utilize, right? We try to source halal meat when we can find that at reasonable prices as often, as often as we can. And we're very fortunate that our Feeding America partner is able to provide some of that for us as well at really reduced costs. We try to ensure, and we do look ahead even for like cultural celebrations and what folks might be looking for, and ensuring that we have some of those pieces. Is it, what are the common recipe components in those pieces? We also do that with our produce, because produce interests vary across different populations of students, and so we try to provide and find out via survey what those shared interests are, and try to provide those in the pantry, so that everybody's getting a little bit of something that is important to them. But it's usually where they're, if I like this and somebody else likes that, it's like the middle part in that Venn diagram of like what are those products that we can provide that will meet as many people's needs as possible.
I want to also add that I'm very proud of the work of Student Affairs. This past year, we swung into gear by offering trips to Lansing for our international students, in particular when we saw an increase in their attendance to CMU. We realized that there was, low portions of halal meat and other items that, spices and other goods and services that they would need. And we least a couple of buses that would take the students to these shopping areas in Lansing where there's greater distribution. And we've kept that going, last semester and this semester. But realize, everyone doesn't cook, but it certainly did bring a lot of joy to those students that wanted to have access to those items. And we'll keep that going. And so that also reduced a lot of the, visits that would have been to the food pantry, right, had we didn't have that service, because students definitely need to have those items. I see Stan Shingles, our other campus partner in this space. I didn't know if he wants to speak to that, as Stan has been very influential from the student activities and involvement side and providing some of those services. Would love to get the opportunity for him to speak and share from his vantage point the things that have been successful. Stan, you're muted, I believe.
Sorry about that. Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Watson, to share. And you mentioned the trips to Lansing. Those have proven to be extremely successful, especially as we onboard our international students into a different environment, a different culture, and oftentimes lots of deficit in terms of what they would like to see. And instead of making the trip to Lansing kind of this stereotypic trip of international students, we actually folded it into our CMU on the road program through which is actually student activities, on the involvement on the road. So that has proven to be very successful. We saw an increase from a year ago when we did it in the fall, and it's something that's been met with a lot of success. Additionally, some of the things we're trying to do in terms of just the overall engagement, of students, especially as we support their well-being and healthy lifestyles. It's offering a variety of activities that they can engage in. I recall an experience right after Dr. Watson got here where we went to an event and there was no alternatives from a food standpoint available for our students. And I remember Erica wasn't in her role yet. I remember she called me in and said, how do we not make that allow that to happen again? And it was one of the things we didn't realize. It was actually our main stage, which takes place the Sunday before classes started. And we had the opportunity to serve students who didn't eat meat. We just packaged the menu that we had collectively in a culture that we understand we had all the ingredients there. So it had to be a bit of a mind shift. We have gotten very high marks on that as we think about menus in our cultural programs. And of course, these things are addressing food insecurities. And I had the opportunity to go to our Around the World event back in, I think it was early December. I can't remember. I think it was early December, it was right after Thanksgiving, as I recall. And when you walk through and saw, and we're seeing now the intentional interest of meeting the needs of all students, because in many instances we know that that might be their only meal of the day in many instances. Dr. Watson has worked with Chartwells to now do a morning breakfast to kick off semesters that have helped students to come in, and we're building relationships with those students. So we're able to identify students who may have insecurities by virtue of sitting down and having a meal with them. And then we can now point those students to the right resources, more importantly, build a relationship with them so we can check in on them, make sure that they're doing well, and that this is all, coming together. So it's being built in a sustainable way because we're folding it into existing programming. So it doesn't stand alone. Sometimes when it stands alone, it doesn't always have the support that is needed. And I think we all believe we're making measurable progress.
It looks like we have another question. Megan says, I believe at one time students in the food, nutrition, and dietetics program helped to offer meal prep workshops using goods from the food pantry. Is that type of collaboration still taking place?
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. Absolutely. So one of the other things that we're really proud of is the food pantry, in the food pantry, is the work that we do to support the students utilizing the food pantry by also helping to enhance the education of the students that are studying on our campus. And so one of those is the food, nutrition, and dietetics programs. So we typically annually, we have a group of students who have to do a project in one of their dietetics classes. And we are one of the sites every year for those students to consider choosing. So they will work with us to be able to provide those healthy recipes, right? Of here's what we have in the food pantry, and here are the types of meals that you can make from that. And here's how to make sure that those are nutritionally adequate for you, so that your body is getting the fuel that it needs to be able to do all those hard brain works in chem class and biology. And so we're really proud of that. We also partner with for instance, our integrated marketing program, who helps us update and review our marketing strategies to stay current with where students are annually. So they're helping us to do surveys of our users, as well as helping to identify trends in social media and whatnot that we might be able to capitalize on to ensure that students are aware of the food pantry. We also are really proud of the work and the partnership that we have with the med school on campus. And so first year med students annually work with the food pantry to be able to they have to do a project, and they volunteer as part of their course requirements for a few hours in the pantry. But then each year they're able to do a project that we can help them determine. And sometimes it's food and nutrition related. This year it was the students that were working with us were particularly interested in warmth, and helped with the warmth drive for cold gear for students. Things that we're really looking for and working for with them. For instance, we've had some challenges with students understanding canned goods and the nutritional value of canned items. And so having med students be able to provide informational handouts and whatnot on the nutritional value of a canned good, which is actually, canned goods are wonderful, right? They're packed at their peak nutritional value, and they go from being picked right to the can in incredibly short amount of times. And so the nutritional value that folks are getting from a can of canned goods is really high. But there's this misconception out there that it might not be as good of quality as a fresh produce. And in some cases it's as good, or sometimes even better, because it was canned at peak optimal nutritional value time. Whereas the fresh produce may have had to travel further. So we're helping folks understand, what is the value of that, and how do you, mitigate salt and sodium intake and whatnot, for instance, in that, by using canned goods, and how do you ensure that you're getting the proper nutrition if that's a primary source of your food. So yeah, and that I would also say that that's something that the Greater Division of Student Affairs is working toward. And I don't know if Dr. Watson, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the work you've done to increase the internships across our division to be able to use experiential learning that's happening in student affairs to support our course education.
As we know that students oftentimes need to complete an independent study, or they need to do a research project or internship. And we're very lucky to be able to partner with the health professions, college, as well as social work out of our class, to be able to do those internships and research opportunities within the Division of Student Affairs. We feel this is a great way for students to not only understand the work of student affairs, but to be able to do that in a college setting. And so they are able to work in the food pantry on a different project and have Erica be that coordinator. And she works alongside the site coordinator that makes that possible for the students to do their research. They can come and do an independent project. I have 3 students that have signed on with me to do some work, and we hope that those papers will be publishable and they will be able to present and obviously use that body of work to have us look at our policies and conduct audits, and as well as look at ways for improving practice. And so we're excited to be able to contribute to students' degree completion in that way. And some of these students can work, over 400 hours just in one semester. And so we're really, really excited about that. And that also helps us, look at our staffing needs and to be able to provide this great opportunity, especially for international students and even students that don't have a car. It's great for them to be able to do this on our college campus versus having to travel to Lansing and Grand Rapids, maybe even some of our non-traditional learners. To be able to do that here is such a huge help, as well as our students that are LGBTQ. Sometimes going out in the community, they may not find the right fit and may not be ready to tell their story. Offer these kind of research internship opportunities on campus to work in any one of our departments, the food pantry being one, is another way that we are helping them have a sense of belonging while they're completing their degree.
Trustee Regis, you have your hand up. Please go ahead with your question.
I do. I was just going to make a comment. First off, thank you, Dr. Watson. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. And thank you, Stan and Allison, for doing this presentation. I just want to say that, as you already know, I am personally committed to your pantry. It was one of the first places I visited in my first visit to your campus after becoming a trustee, and it's one that I visit every time I'm there. I'm also want to just give you a little heads up that I have challenged our Academic and Student Affairs Committee chair to start looking at opportunities for us to help in this area and to help you with the work you do. I've also challenged our Finance and Facilities Committee chair to start looking at how we can help in that area too. I look forward to the day when we have the opportunity and have the budget that would allow us to help finance some of the work that you do. I'm not saying that's happening this year. I'm saying that I look forward to the future when it does. But I do want to commit to you right now that as I think we are on campus Monday and Tuesday for our first board meeting. My colleagues and I are dining with the deans on Monday evening. We will be talking about how they can assist from their schools and how can they help come up. I'm going to challenge all 6 of them, so this is secret. Don't tell them this yet, but I am personally going to challenge them how they can support the food pantry from their college. I want to know what they can do to help. And the commitment I'm making to you is please get with Mary Jane, and on either our April meeting or our June meeting, myself and my 7 colleagues will be volunteers for you that day. We will visit, we will volunteer, we'll work that into our schedule while we're there. So we can't support if we don't know. So thank you again for the work.
Thank you so much, Trustee Regis. Your support has meant a great deal to, I know, student affairs, to the food pantry, and to me as someone who cares so deeply about this issue as well. Yeah, that's wonderful, and I really look forward to being able to have you see our pantry in operations. I know you visited several times while it has been as well, so just thrilled about this possibility and opportunity. So always grateful for the support.
And I would like to say that Dean Moberg has been the epitome of just being with us in this work. When we call him, he responds very quickly. And so I just want to let you know that if you want a good example right there, Dean Moberg. So the other deans have a great leader to follow in these efforts already.
I would just like to, we'll probably start to wrap up here. Thank you so much, Dr. Watson and Dr. Johnson, for doing this for us today. We are very excited about this campus conversation. I will say that this particular campus conversation has had the most real-time participants since we have done these. So that's also very exciting as well. Quick reminder, we will be doing another campus conversation with Student Affairs at the end of February, and our topic is first-gen students. So again, very excited about that as well. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend today. And I just am very excited about moving forward, and we have some exciting things to see for the Student Food Pantry. Without further ado, if Dr. Johnson, Dr. Watson, I'm not sure if you had any closing remarks, but thank you.
Thank you, and fire up chips.
Fire up.
Thank
We'll
you
see you
all.
soon.